All right. Well, it's 25 after the hour, so let's get going here. Thanks for joining us on the last installment of day two, other than the office hours. So don't forget office hours after this. We had a really good one yesterday, had about 25, 26 people join, some great questions and some interesting answers. So don't forget that. But now we're here with Martin Evans. You know him from previous sessions, I'm sure. Senior Technical Product Manager, and he's going to talk to us about how to do observation of IBM MQ. So I'll get out of your way, Martin, and take it away.
Thanks, Ray. Hi, everybody. So welcome to Observing IBM MQ M24. As Ray said, I'm Martin Evans. I won't say that title again, but I will tell you a little bit about me. I've been working with MQ for about 20 years now. I joined IBM in 2019, previously working mostly in the financial services sector with MQ and ACE, but typically specializing on MQ. So only been with IBM for about 6 years now, but lots of experience of MQ and lots of experience of observing MQ and setting it up to be fully observable. So hopefully I will be able to give you some good information today. Okay, I'm going to skim through the disclaimer there. We have to put those in, but basically all that's saying is anything I say might not happen. So that's all you need to worry about on that. Okay, so you might have seen this slide in Kim's presentation, and well, Kim and I did a presentation yesterday, and we talked a little bit about all of the sort of ecosystem around MQ and all the components that make it a mature product. So I've just brought that up there as a quick reminder, but we're focusing today on observability, which is down there in the bottom right hand side of that. Okay, and for a platform to have complete functionality and be an enterprise application, it's got to have good observability. Okay, so this chart is the one from the presentation that Kim and I did yesterday, but here you can see we're going to focus today on observability. Okay, on application tracing, metrics, logs and events, and real-time diagnostics. This should hopefully come clear as we go through. I'm also going to do a demo today, and I'm going to go through and show you the latest MQ console and how we can push metrics into something like Grafana to get some really nice graphs and charts and historical data. Okay. All right, so just before I go on to OpenTelemetry, I'll just quickly go back. The plan is to give you a bit of an overview of observability in general in the context of MQ, what we've got today, what we're looking at, the demo, and talk a little bit about OpenTelemetry. I want to start introducing that as well. So before I move on to any specific things, I'd like to just explain exactly what OpenTelemetry is in case anyone's not aware of it. So OpenTelemetry is a framework, a toolkit designed to create and manage trace metrics and events. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those three, often referred to as the three pillars of observability by OpenTelemetry. So it's a vendor and tool agnostic solution, and it can be used with a broad variety of observability solutions. So that could be our own IBM Instana, or it could be a observability solution of your own choice, and there are lots of them out there. There's also some open source stuff that you can use as well, like Grafana Labs, Jaeger, Prometheus, and lots more. Okay, and I was reading a report this week about observability platforms, one of the Gartner reports, and I had a quick look at the all of the providers in the top quadrant, if you like, the top right, where everybody wants to be, and they are all supporting OpenTelemetry now. So this is sort of trend in the industry, if you like. Okay. Oh, and just one other thing on logistics. I'm on my own today, but I will be taking questions. So I may pause as we go along, take a look, see if there are any questions, but I'll make sure I leave some time at the end of the session to answer any questions. So please do use the chat to put questions, and I will get to them for you. Okay, all right. So a little bit about OpenTelemetry and observability, perhaps in general as well. So as I mentioned, OpenTelemetry has this idea of the 3 pillars of observability: events, metrics, and traces. Events, often I think called logs as well, but essentially it's an event. Something's happened. It could have been written to a log, but in MQ's case, it could also be written to a queue. So these are things that have happened. Okay, an event has happened. So typically, we use those events in our monitoring, so they'll generate a monitoring alert, which may go off to an operations desk or somewhere like that, which will trigger some actions. We also have metrics there, so that's time series metrics. So that's your metric, which is going to have a name, it'll have a value and a timestamp. So queue depth 10 at this time, and so on. And those things come out periodically, and we can use those for trending and analysis, but we can also set alerts on those as well. But typically we tend to alert on events. Something's happened, take some action. But we can set alerts on metrics as well if we want to, but mainly used for trending and analysis. And then traces. Traces are kind of, I'd say, probably newer. A lot of these things aren't new. I think the main thing for me that is new in observability is the OpenTelemetry, the standards-based approach. Traces are quite new to MQ as well, though. We recently released exit that can provide OpenTelemetry tracing. I've got another slide on that, so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So at the bottom here, we've got OpenTelemetry formatted data. So we've got our 3 pillars. So this is all the data. The data feeds up into the observability solution, which is giving us all the information about our system. Okay, I've got real-time analysis in there as well. It doesn't quite fit in with the OpenTelemetry as such, but it falls into that sort of observability solution, if you like, because we've got to have the ability to look at what's going on in the system as well. So when those events trigger a monitoring alert, we need to be able to go in and see what's happening in real time and do some analysis. Okay, so what do we have in MQ today? So we have events and logs. We have our standard error logs. We have the original MQ format, which is like a multi-line format, proprietary, if you like, human readable, but not quite so easy to use in a machine readable way because it's more like unstructured. But we do now have JSON format logs as well. So they're much more machine readable, makes it much easier to process those logs. Performance and audit and configuration events. We can generate events about performance, so things like queue depth high, queue depth low, they go onto a queue. So as I was saying earlier, although you might see logs and log files as something that you're going to ingest, what's in those, that's like a container for the event. The important thing is the event, and in MQ's case, we have those events on queues and in logs. So just think of it as an event. Something's happened that I might need to act upon. Okay, time series metrics. We have extensive time series metrics in the way of accounting and statistics messages. They're in our proprietary PCF format, and I'll come back to that, but I want you to just keep that in mind. If you look at this, when you look at this slide, you see, well, you've got logs in JSON format, you've got messages in queues with events on them, you've got some statistics in PCF. We've got the resource monitoring, which is a topic that you can subscribe to get information, and we've got other sources of information as well. So like application tracing, I mentioned the OpenTelemetry tracing, but we also have things like the MQ application activity trace, and we have the something called reset queue statistics, which I won't go into detail, but it's another way of getting information out of the queue manager. So MQ has lots and lots of sources of information. And keep that in mind, because that's important as we start to move on to where we want to get to in the future when I start talking about futures. Okay, command line. So we have the traditional run MQSC that hopefully everyone's familiar with. That's a way of interacting with the queue manager, querying it, asking things of the queue manager like status on the queue manager, queues and stuff like that. We have a tool called AMQS EVT, which is a sample that's been available for a while, which can take some of those PCF events, like the performance events, and format them into human readable. We've got a little bit of a development on that. We've got a new version of that, which was written in Go, and that also allows us now to send those events on to an OpenTelemetry collector. I think I've got some more info on that coming up. So on the command line, yeah, so queue manager client and tracing, that's more for your debugging side of things. So when you're collecting traces for support, but that's in that command line real-time diagnostics area. Then graphical user interfaces, we've got the IBM MQ console and MQ Explorer, more on that. And then observability solutions, we've got Instana, which is IBM strategic observability solution, but we've also got Tivoli Amigamon and some of the older Tivoli stuff, I think, which I haven't really had much dealings with, but they are still there. Okay, so just a quick recap. Broadly speaking, we have lots and lots of data that we can use to provide the information to know what's going on in MQ. Some of it's in a more proprietary format, less easy to consume format, but there is lots and lots of it there. Okay. Right. So what's new in MQ observability? Console. So console is something that we are actively developing and improving all the time. So it's constantly evolving. We're putting lots of effort into the design of that. What we're trying to do with the console is put some intelligence into it so that you don't have to run 3 or 4 commands and kind of take bits of information from one command and join it all together. We're doing those joins for you. So if you look at a queue and you want to see what's consuming from it, you can do that. You can follow the links through. We're also making the console available as a standalone application, which is great if you want to decouple it from the queue manager. So you can then upgrade that whenever you want. You could run it in a highly available web server farm with central configuration to all your queue managers if you want to, so your developers don't have to install anything. They can go to one central place and access all your queue managers, makes it nice and easy to manage, and you can upgrade it independently of your queue managers. Just a couple little snippets of things that are new. 941, we improved the look and feel with a new carbon framework. That's the latest IBM look and feels. That's a really nice improvement. We've got a great navigation panels and stuff like that. I mean, it's really is quite nice to work with. 942, the most recent CD release, we released customizable columns and the ability to look at message headers. So we've done lots and lots of things in the console, but that's just a few of the things we've done. And then previous to that, we've done dashboards, time zone awareness, and I've got a couple of slides that show some of those things coming up. For logs, I mentioned before, we've got JSON format logs now, but we've also got a blog and some samples that will show you how to collect the events that are written to those logs and send them onto an OpenTelemetry collector. And hopefully this is all going to start coming together as we move through this presentation. Okay. Command line, we've added new capability into the queue manager recently for like native HA, cross-region replication. So you've got more information on the queue manager in run MQSC. Actually, the other thing is the DSP MQ has also got some switches on it now as well to show you what the state is of your queue manager. So they're just keeping up with new improvements or new functionality rather in MQ. We've got a new command line tool called MQ Perf Check. That's for performance diagnostics, kind of thing you might want to run if you're doing deeper diagnostics on performance issues. Perhaps you want to share information with level 2 and level 3. I've got a screenshot on that. That's quite extensive. I'm not going to go into that now, but there's a lot of information that will give you about your system. And then DSP MQ Cert, that allows you to run it. You can run it in a script if you want to, and it can report on expired certificates. Okay, so console updates. So I mentioned that you can run the console in standalone mode. So this is just a drawing I put together that just shows how, if you wanted to, you could run your MQ console. So you could put a load balancer in front of it. So your web browser clients would connect to load balancer. They can get spread across the 3. So you've got scalability, availability in your console there. You can upgrade them independently, and you can configure them with common configuration pointing to all your queue managers. Dashboards. So you can see here that you've got a lot of information in one place. We've collected all the really important stuff, put in a dashboard, and you can see here as I go through these, you can see the capability that's added in. Okay. So you've got connected applications, queue manager connections, and some activity summaries. Okay. And interestingly, the Q4 one, I'll show you in the demo, hopefully, how I inadvertently left something running prior to the demo, and I went to set the demo up, but I've left it because it's in a sort of failed state, if you like, highlighting that, and I'll show you that in a moment. Okay. And that's just the panel. So this is showing that when you click on the tabs like MQ Network or applications, you'll get more dashboards again. So there's the main dashboard that's giving you that summary of the queue manager. And then as you go through the tabs across the top, you get dashboards for each of those tabs as well. And then this is the very latest one, 942 customizable columns. So you can see over there on the right that I can choose whatever I want to show in those columns. Okay, that's just one screenshot from the MQ Perf check. And the reason I've got that in there is just so you can see the detail that this is going into, what it's showing you. So this is not for the faint-hearted, perhaps. It really is quite in-depth, detailed diagnostics. And there are quite a few pages of that. It generates an HTML report, which you can then browse through. But it gives you lots and lots of information. You can set it to take little snapshots and run for a period of time. Okay. So back to OTel. So what's new for MQ and OTel? So what are we doing around OTel? So events and logs. We've got that new AMQS EBT Go-based tool. It's a sample or example that's available for you to use, and you can collect those events that are coming out on those queues. So your queue depth high, queue depth low, audit events, all those events, you can take those and send them straight into an OTel collector or a observability solution that supports OpenTelemetry, and push those straight in and get those as events. The queue depth high and queue depth low events have been around for a long time in MQ. They're a very, very efficient way of triggering an alert on a queue depth or something like that, because they will, instead of having to poll, the queue manager will just instantly send that notification as soon as that queue depth goes up. So that's a really efficient way of monitoring the queue depths. And now you can just tie that into your log monitoring system as well and generate alerts from that. Samples from formatting the JSON logs. So I mentioned that we've got these JSON logs now. We can format the original logs in JSON. The nice thing about that is the OpenTelemetry collector. So the OpenTelemetry collector is part of that framework. It's a piece of software that you can download and run. It's extensively supported in the open source. IBM contribute to it. It's one of those open source tools that is really well maintained by the community and supported and heavily used. So it's quite a I'm trying to think of the right word to use. It's kind of like a safe open source thing to use, for want of a better word. But it's well supported, and what you can do is with a very little bit of config, you can take our logs now and push those out to an open telemetry collector. So from an events point of view in MQ, you've got capability there now to take all of the things that are happening and generating events and push those into an open telemetry collector. So again, this is the three pillars of observability events covered. Metrics, we've got some open source samples that can now send metrics to an open telemetry collector. I've put the URLs in here. This has been around for quite a while. Mark Taylor predominantly maintains this. You've probably mostly seen it with Prometheus, and I'm going to show it working with Prometheus, but it can now send to open telemetry. So that's your time series metrics. You can get the time series metrics out of MQ and send them on to. You can also look at QDEPs and all the other hundreds and hundreds of metrics that MQ produces. That's still open source currently, but we're looking at how we can provide a supported version of that, or some kind of support for open telemetry metrics. I'm kind of jumping ahead to futures there a bit. We'll come back to that. Traces. So traces, we announced support for traces in version 9.3.5. We use an exit. It comes from, I'm going to say this comes from Instana, but this is something that you get as part of MQ. So don't think you're getting anything from Instana as such. It's an IBM MQ thing. But the reason I say that is because when you follow the links through, it will take you to the Instana site for documentation. So your IBM MQ entitlement, any IBM MQ license entitles to use the exit, just the exit as an MQ exit. But the configuration is on the Instana page. We didn't copy it across because that would have just been duplicating it. So we link over to the Instana site for that. Now, although we released it in 9.3.5, that exit actually supports any in support version of MQ. So if you're running version 9.30, if you're running 9.3 LTS, you can still use it and still get support. Okay. And just to reiterate, it's IBM MQ entitlement that gives you that ability to run that exit. And so if you have any problems with it, you don't have to contact anyone else. You contact IBM MQ support, and they'll help you with that. So traces, tick, fully supported and available from 9.3.5. Metrics, we have an open source solution for it. We're looking at how we can make that fully supported. Events and logs, we have the JSON logs, so it's very easy to scrape those and send them on using the open telemetry collector. I'm not sure we need to do much more than that. Okay. A little bit more detail then on open telemetry tracing. So you can see here that what it does is it creates an end-to-end application trace. So tracing is about observing not just MQ, it's about observing the whole application journey stack, or the whole message journey, if you like. So it might start with an HTTP request. It could then end up with an MQ message on a queue. It could then go to a database, could come back to MQ. And what application tracing does is it gives you that ability to see each part of that journey, each leg of that journey, so you can see where the data is spending time, if you like, or the request. So in this case, we can see here that some time was spent on an MQ, and in the full trace, you would see exactly how long it was sat on that queue for. So you could perhaps suggest, from that you could infer that the application was busy doing something else, and maybe you would want to point that out or bring that to the attention of that application support team and tell them that they're taking a long time to consume your messages. So this is going to help you diagnose problems quickly and get to the right teams and find out where the issues are quickly. Okay. All right. So we're now moving into demonstration territory. So I'm going to quickly pop over to the chat window and see what questions we've got before we get into that.
Some contributors have added answers already, but take a good look.
Okay, let's have a quick look then. So, hello from San Diego. Hello to San Diego from the UK. Where are we? So, can the queue manager output both original MQ logs and JSON logs at the same time? There's a reply to that, and the answer is yes. And that person, Morag, thank you very much, has also answered yes. Great. Okay, Mark. Oh, Mark's on there as well. Excellent. Thank you. Oh, well, I think we're going to have all the questions answered. Brilliant. When will OpenTelemetry be available for MQ on ZOS? Okay. I have to be careful what I say here because refer back to the disclaimer, and anything I say might not happen. So I can't give you any dates on that. But what I can tell you is that we are looking at it and it is planned for a future release. That's yeah, that work's ongoing. So I think that's probably all I can say on that. So watch this space, it's on its way. Is the JSON format only available from 9.4.2? No, JSON format was available earlier, and I'm guessing that's what the reply said. And then what's the Carbon framework? We have some replies on that as well. Let's see, Carbon framework. Yeah, we've got that one answered. So the Carbon for everybody else, Carbon framework is I'm just going to check I've got this right. Yeah, common UI framework, which is what all the IBM tools use. It gives a nice common look and feel. That OpenTelemetry screen, what do you use to visualize that? Is it in Stana? The OpenTelemetry screen, let me go back. Which one are we talking about here? That one there, OpenTelemetry Stana. I think that's talking about this one, and that was hand built. What I would say for the OpenTelemetry tracing is that you can use quite a few tools there. Zipkin, Jaeger. So if you want to have a play around, what you can do is you can use the OpenTelemetry tracing exit, our one, and you can just point that at some of the OpenTelemetry tools like Jaeger and Zipkin. You can spin those up really easily. Is OpenTelemetry available on MQ appliance? Not yet. That's something else we're working on. Can we forward messages from MQ event queues to Hotel Collector? Yes. So that's what I was talking about with the MQS EBTG. That's the new sample that Mark has been working on. That can take the messages from that queue and send them on to an OpenTelemetry collector or compatible observability solution that supports OpenTelemetry. Okay. Right, I feel much happier now that I know that we have Mark and Morag answering questions on that chat. Thank you guys, that's much appreciated. All right, so demo. I'm going to just take you through the topology of the demo first very quickly. I've got a very basic Java producer application and a consumer application sending to a queue. I'm going to be using the console to look at the queue manager. So the console application is running within the same, I'm using OpenShift. It doesn't have to be OpenShift, obviously, but I happen to use OpenShift because it's easy for me to set everything up. The console application is running within OpenShift per queue manager, so it's not the standalone one. So each pod or container in the OpenShift deployment has got a console application running, and we have the metrics emitter as well. And that's the open source one that Mark very kindly provides for us. That's feeding events into Grafana. So this is actually using Prometheus in this instance, but it could equally be OpenTelemetry, but it's Prometheus. And I'm going to just quickly walk through how I got that working with MQ. So essentially what you need to do at the moment is you need to build that Go executable and configure it. So what I've done in this case is I've cloned Mark's metric sample, or our metric samples, and within there's a Docker file which I just need to pass into builder, or which is kind of like doing Docker build kind of thing. That compiles, builds everything for me, and I just leave that in an image. And then I've got another repository which has got the configuration in it and a Docker file which gets an MQ image. So what happens is we build the executable, store that in an image, just literally just there so that the image is ready. The executable is there for me. I then do a clone of a repo which has got a Docker file in it. And essentially all that's doing is pulling in the MQ built image. So that's the IBM MQ image from our repository, pulls that in, copies in the Prometheus metrics into a folder on that image and a configuration file. And that's it. That's all that needs to be done. So build it, copy it into the, or layer it onto the MQ image. If it was a VM, you just be copying it into a folder and pop a configuration file in there along with that. Okay, that's all we need to do. All right, I just want to explain that because you might think it's doing something really complex here. It's not. It's just simply copying an executable into an existing MQ image and a simple config file. Okay, so live demo. Here's where it gets interesting. I've got a recording in case this goes wrong, but the plan here is to observe that nothing's connected and there's no activity. We'll start a consumer and a producer application. We'll observe that activity, so we'll see things working normally. We'll look at that in both the console and Grafana. We'll increase the producer count or maybe stop the consumer so we can see messages building up. So this is a very, very simple, I accept this is a very, very simple problem to solve. You know, we're not getting really deep into the queue manager. We don't really have the time to do that, but hopefully you'll get a good feel for the console and the metrics in something like Grafana to see what we can do. Obviously, we could do a lot more complex stuff if we wanted to. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll pretend that a event occurred, like a QDEV high, and then we'll take some action. We'll pretend we've contacted the application team. They've realized that consumer's not running. We'll start it up. We'll watch the backlog clear, and we'll look at that in both the console and the Grafana dashboard. Okay, so I need to stop sharing this presentation for the moment. Okay, just make that. Let's get out of there. Okay, move that. Just moving windows around a bit so I can see what I need to do. And I need to go to that one and share that. Okay. Okay. I'm sharing my console now. Now I'm just going to flick over to, could one of the moderators please just say, yes, you can see my browser screen. So, okay, I'm going to go to the chat. Somebody just
yes, I can see it.
Oh, great, thank you, excellent. Okay, all right. So as I was saying earlier, when I went to set this up, the starting point for this is no consumers, no producers, an empty queue, and start going through that kind of script that I was explaining. But when I went to this, I thought, oh, what's going on here? I've got a queue depth full. And I realized what I'd done was I'd left the producers running and not turned the consumers off. So it actually filled my queue up. So I thought I'd leave that because it's quite nice, because it actually shows you what you'll see in the dashboard when you click on the, actually on the overview. I think you'll see it there. You can see the warning there. And then if you go to queues, you can see it there. And if I just put a quick filter on there for the dev queue we're interested in. There it is. Okay. So what I can do with this now is I can clear that, but actually before I do that, let me just get back to queues. I'll show you this in the Grafana dashboard as well. Very simple dashboard that I created, but here you can see that queue depth is at 5,000, and that's been like that for quite a long time because I think I left that running yesterday. So yeah, look, more than 12 hours ago. So we know that's been, this is the really nice thing here, great accidental demonstration of the queue depth. So we can actually go back and see that yesterday evening at about 6 o'clock, I closed the consumers down and left the producers running. And I think if we go back even a little bit further, we might even see that on those dials. Let's try last 2 days. No, I think they're not going to show that because of the way the history works on the dials there. But you can see there anyway that went up. So anyway, that I thought was quite interesting. So let's go to say 15 minutes. So yeah, we've still got our queues full. So what I'll do now is I will clear that queue. So let me just do this. Clear queue. Clear queue. Instantly cleared because this is the console and this is in near as real time as we can get. Okay, so we've got no messages on the queue, nothing connected for input and output, and nothing attached. Okay, so this is our sort of starting point. Everything's looking normal. All right, so let's go start our applications now. I'm running this in a uniform cluster, not really that relevant, but it just means I need to start at least 2 of these. Otherwise, we could get messages stuck on a queue manager with no consumer and nothing coming in on the producer. Just pop that up, save that. And what I want to do is go quickly to the dashboard here because I want you to see that it's not actually shown up here yet. But if we go to the console, quickly refresh there. It says this is a live demo. I'm not seeing anything. I should see something there. What I was hoping to show you there was that this reacts instantly. Let me just check this, make sure these are running. See, this is the great thing about live demos. Always fun to watch the presenter sweat. It might be that they just need to rebalance because I'm looking at one console here. Let me refresh that again. Refresh that now. Okay, there we go. Now it's there. All right. So we've now got one connected for output and nothing connected for input. So I think this must be the queue manager's rebalancing stuff. Let's have a look over here, see what's going on. Yeah, there we go. This dashboard is showing us that we've got producers connected to QM1 and QM2, and the consumers are only connected. Oh, there we go. It's just rebalanced now. So that's now going to come across to one. But what's interesting about that, if we look at the last 5 minutes, what we should see there is we should see a build up of messages on the queue that didn't, or the queue manager that didn't have a consumer, which we should be able to see. Anyway, let's get back to the demo. So we observed nothing connected. We've started our producers and consumers. So let's hope we've got this back to here. There we go. So we've got one application connected for input and one for output, 2 attached apps. And I can click on the applications up here and look at it from an applications view, look at connected applications. You can see these applications here. I can expand these down and I can see that I've got an application consumer connected to a queue, and I can click on a queue and I can go to straight to that queue. This is what I was saying about that intelligence that we're building into the console to allow you to quickly navigate around, so you can look at it from an application standpoint or from the queue standpoint. Okay, right. So I'm just looking at my script. So we started our producers and consumers. So we can see we've got producers and consumers spread across the queue managers. Unfortunately, we still got that depth, which is kind of skewing the graph here a little bit. the values here, because we've got these high values. Once that drops off, we'll get a bit better view of that. But we can see we've got inbound messages here. I don't know if I can change that granularity down to less than 5 minutes. Not easily. Well, we'll soon see that as we zoom in. There, we should be able to see stuff. We've got no messages in the queue and the backlog, and there we can just see that draining down. Okay, so what we'll do now then is we'll increase the number of producers, and we'll stop the consumers. We'll bump that up to say 8. And just briefly, whilst I'm thinking about it, when I looked at the Grafana dashboard, and we could see that there were more consumers on one of the queue managers than the other. If I'd gone onto the console of the other one, we would have seen that as well. It was just that I'm only connected to the queue manager 01 console at the moment. If I'd gone onto 2, we would have seen the higher number on that queue manager before it rebalanced. So this is uniform cluster, which is rebalancing. For those who don't know about uniform clusters, the connections get rebalanced across the applications. Okay, so we've got 4 producers now. Still got 1 consumer. Let's just stop all the consumers. Let's simulate our consumer application going down. Okay, so we've got no problem. So what we should start seeing, well, if we go to the console first, let's do a refresh on that. Straight away, we see we've got nothing connected for input. Did I stop all those consumers? Oh, so we've got, sorry, I'm tying myself up in knots here. We still have 4 producers connected, so applications connected for output, but none connected for input. So no consumers. So the 4 attached apps are the consumers. So we can see now that the queue depth is going up. Okay, we're already up to 52, 56. So as I refresh that, we can see that's going up. All right, so we know we've got a backlog building. So if we go to Grafana, we should start seeing that as well now. There we are. So we can see that queue, and you can see that that's behind. That's showing 4 messages, and that's because, well, it's jumped up now, but that's because, what are we at there? We're at 44 there. This is polling, and this is looking at it instantly. So if I refresh that, refresh, we're at 100 there, 100, 104. Go back to this dashboard, and we're still at 44. So you can see that the time series is lagging behind a little bit, which is why it's nice to have the console for that real time in the now, what's going on my queue manager. Okay, so we've got a backlog. So we, as we said, we're going to imagine that we've got an alert to say the queue depth has gone high, perhaps for our event login, contacted the consumer team, and they've said, yeah, please go ahead and start our consumers up. So let's do this. So I'm hoping is that some of these will connect right away to this queue manager. There you go. So queue manager 1, straight away, input's gone up to 4. So we can see now we've got connection there. If I go over to this dashboard, it has actually quite quickly showing 4 on that queue manager, but none on that one. But just trying to show you that you can get that little bit of a time lag on the time series. This is good for seeing that historical stuff. Console, great for seeing what's happening right now instantaneously on my queue manager. So let's see if that queue depth is going down. There we go. Oh, down to 0 already. So we're quite happy with that. And we've got 4 and 4, so we've rebalanced our connections. So we should be able to go to our dashboard here, and we can see, yeah, all the producers and consumers are nicely balanced across the queue managers. Our queue depth is still showing 164 here, but there we go, drop back down to 0. Everything's looking good now. So in our console, what we're looking at is what the current status is, what the current situation is, the overview. Everything looks great, all good. Queue depth 0 on our dev queue down here. We've got producers and consumers, 8 applications. Oh, this is the other nice thing as well. We can take a look at the queue status on here, and we can see that the oldest message was a few seconds ago, and last put get times. So we know everything's up to date. We know messages are going through from the console, but we can also come over here and look at the dashboard, and we can see that, oh, we had a problem there, but it was resolved at this time, went back to 0 at that point. And we can see that inbound messages and outbound messages, our inbound messages stayed fairly constant because we kept producers running, but our outbound messages rate dropped right down because we stopped those consumers and then came back up as we started them. So you can see the timings there. Okay, so I'm just looking at my script. I think that is the demo. All right. Don't think there was anything else I wanted to show you there. So let me stop sharing that. And let me now switch back to sharing the presentation. Okay. Bear with me, I'll just switch windows, share window, presentation, full screen. Okay, all right, that's only showing on one screen. So let me just, all right, I'm a little bit of a problem with my dual screens, but I think I'm sharing the slides. Yep, I can see that. Okay.
Yeah, it says future of open telemetry, and now it says live demo.
There we go. Great, thanks, Ray. So, okay, so futures. So, quick summary then. We talked a little bit about all the capabilities that are in MQ today. Lots and lots of data in there. It can be surfaced in different ways. We're starting to trend towards open telemetry. So hopefully you've seen that from there. And that's where I think the future is, where we provide all of the information. We will continue to upgrade the MQ console, make that experience better for you. Always going to be improving on the command line or making updates to the command line, keeping that up to date. Those will always be there in the future. We're also looking at how can we make this data available and more easily consumable for our customers so that they can plug it into any observability solution. And as I say there, you choose. All right, oh, we don't want that. I think that is the end of my presentation. So I'm now going to go over to questions and see what we have there. How much time do we have left, Ray?
You have 7 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Although they may have already been answered. Oh, we've had quite a few. Okay. All right, so I think that was the appliance one. Can we forward messages to the MQs? That was answered. Yep, perfect.
Looks like Ravi might have one, the last question that I don't see an answer to.
Yeah, I don't think the performance one was answered. What is the performance impact of doing that? That's obviously it's a brilliant question. One that's always the top of our minds whenever we start enabling this stuff. The approach we're taking so far, I would say, allows us to well, let me put it another way. It's very modular at the moment, right? So we can attach these capabilities like the metrics collector and emitter and run those separately and see what they're doing. I'm running them in the same container, but you can split those out. And that's a nice thing about doing a modular approach. Should we do it within the queue manager? Maybe, maybe not. Those sort of things, we're having those discussions at the moment. We're talking about the best ways of doing that. all the things that we're turning on in the community, the queue manager that are there today, they've got the same performance impact they've always had. There are small performance impacts, you know, turning statistics on or turning this or that on. There are there's a small price to pay for that, but it's quite small. When you're running the things like the MQS EVT program, for instance, that's running a separate process. It's just pulling messages off a queue, so that's going to be pretty light. So the exit, you know, that will impact your message flows because it is a message exit. That is also going to generate some data. I don't have the exact numbers on that, but yes, there is going to be an overhead with some of this, but some things more than others. I'd say tracing is probably going to be more than others, but we are looking at what is the best approach for that. You know, do we do that within the queue manager? Do we do it outside the queue manager? And looking at the impacts of both of those. All right. One from Warwick. Have you been constantly inquiring the queue manager depth all this time? Oh, there's a reply to that, and I think that's probably going to be a reply from Mark, so I think we can skip on that. Yeah, Mark's replied to that one. Okay, Ray, did you say there was one last question that hasn't been answered there?
You may have it. Mine's not refreshing, so you may have a more current one than I do.
Okay, we've got the one from Morag, which is saying, have I been constantly polling the queue? And Mark's answered that with the collector is using the sys topics. So no inquire commands, right? You get a publication message. Okay, answered that one. I'm looking at the last one. Can I perform trigger on MQ queues based on a threshold breach? Yes, you can. I'm guessing that's what the answer says. Yes. So you can use the event messages for that. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly talk a little bit more about that. So I said, let me share.
And I misstated, you have till 25 minutes after the hour.
Oh,
so
okay, brilliant. All right.
So you got a few more minutes.
Brilliant, thanks, Ray. So let me just talk a little bit about that. There are more than one ways you can get the an alert, say, for a queue depth going up. So I mentioned that we have the event messages and how they get generated. So on the queue manager, you can set queue depth high, queue depth low thresholds. So when they get breached, and that's on a percentage basis, when that breaches, the queue manager will immediately generate an event. So you don't have to poll for it. It just gets injected straight away. What you can also do, though, is you can say, well, I want to subscribe to the system topic, a system resource topic, which is what the Prometheus emitter is doing. And that's getting messages on that subscription periodically. You can also set an alert of that. So if you, I will share again. I'll show you what I mean. Let me share that Grafana screen. Isn't it? Yeah. Just move this because the controls are on it. All right. Okay. So if I expand that period, we'll go back and have a look at that time. So we look at the last 15 minutes. Yeah, there we go. So you can see here, we've gone a threshold, you know, we've got 164 messages. In Grafana, you can set up alerts as well. So I could, if I wanted to, set up an alert for anything going above, say, 100 here. And that's a more literal number rather than a percentage. So queue depth high is saying if you go over 10%, and that's based on the max depth of the queue. Whereas this, I could say, if you go over 100, I want you to generate alert. So there are two different places you can get that. But what we want to do is say, well, however you get that time series metric, doesn't really matter in a way, or that metric, that data, because we can send it out through OpenTelemetry. So we're giving you the options to have both, but in a nice standard way. So you could say, well, I want to generate an alert, a warning based off of the event, in which case you can use the queue depth high, queue depth low, or you could say, well, actually, what I'm going to do is I want to base that on the metric. So you don't have to go and poll the queue and ask the queue manager for the queue depth. We'll emit it through the OpenTelemetry metrics, and you can set an alert up on that. So you could, you may not be getting that quite as fast, but maybe that you need to know within 3 minutes, right? Maybe that's not a problem. Maybe it's 30 seconds, but you can adjust that. So the thresholds on the queue depth high, queue depth low, instantaneous, an event has happened, take some action. But equally, you could monitor and set alerts up on your time series metrics as well. And I think I mentioned that in one of the earlier slides. There are different ways of doing it, but you've got that flexibility. But the key thing is you'll have all of this data available through a standard format, and you can plug that into anything you want to. Okay, and again, refer back to some of the slides where I said some things are still in like samples or open source, but from a future standpoint, what we're looking at is how do we make this more easily consumable for our customers? How do we make MQ even more easily observable and in a standard way so you can plug it into any system you want to? All right. We're not going to, in MQ, we're not going to be building the the Grafana dashboards and stuff like that. We are going to build a console and continue to build a console which has got all that real time, what's going on in my queue manager. It's kind of like, I sometimes think of it as like a kind of a scope or the thing you plug into your car, say, right, tell me what's going on in my queue manager right now, and see what's going on. Okay, we're obviously going to keep building on that, but the data will be pushed into another tool that is built to generate and send pager alerts or whatever it is that you need. And graph these things. Grafana is a fantastic system for graphing. This is a really, really simple dashboard. Like Mark's got some sample dashboards that are far more detailed than this one.
All right.
Let's see if there are any more questions.
Well, Martin, you're a brave man doing a live demo. Congratulations.
I was sweating a little bit there.
I always admire, but it's
that,
great.
that was an unintended demonstration of uniform cluster and load balancing.
There you go.
Let's see now. What have we got? We've got some more questions, I think, here.
And I just want to draw everybody's attention to the exit poll here. If you'll just give us your feedback as we're wrapping up.
Okay. And the last question, I think, is being answered. I'm guessing that last one is being answered by Mark, which is how can I activate publishing queue depth to systolic topic? It's done on a subscription basis, so you have to say I want the information for this queue. But that does raise another interesting point and something we've talked about. The statistics message that give you some of the same information is controllable on a queue manager queue, so you can turn that on a queue basis. Whereas with the Prometheus or the collector we have here that's taken from the system topic, you tell it what queues you're interested in. So two slightly different approaches. So we'll be taking a look at that and deciding which is the best way to go, or maybe we'll do both.
Okay. All right. Well, we're right here at time.
Just to answer that question specifically, how I did it here for that dev queue, it was in the configuration for the collector and emitter. All right. I shall stop sharing. Hand it over to you, Ray.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you now.
Okay. We'll rejoin at 30 minutes after the hour, which is just, 6 minutes away, in the office hour. So please join us there. We love to have as many people as we can, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. So again, good job, Martin, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and thanks to my helpers on the chat.